Hey community, welcome to our sermon podcast for wanderers, seekers, and thinkers, for deconstructing and reconstructing. This is a feed of Open Door Church, a faith community focused on God's love and grace, a progressive church built around action, community, and people. Enjoy this week's message and check back often as we're posting new content every week. Usually on these series, they've been sitting and waiting for a year or two even, and this is one that's been just kind of waiting for the right time slot. And here we are, and it's been a year and a half since I've been thinking about a series on dialogue, which kind of maybe should have come sooner. I don't know, it doesn't matter. But I'm excited because we live in this world right now where we are importing the sort of dichotomous arguments and political world of the United States up here, and the left and right get further and further apart, and it is dividing families, it is dividing friends, it is dividing churches, and so I've been thinking about this notion of dialogue for quite some time, and what are the answers to this plague that seems to be infiltrating all of life in around us, in our culture, in our society. For the last 7 years, I've been part of an interfaith committee here in Maple Ridge. And we essentially work to create bridges between communities, to create opportunities for people to see one another, for people to experience and to learn from, to break down those walls and the barriers to the stereotypes and the stigmas, and create the space for dialogue. And we call them interfaith dialogues, and we meet for the most part once a month to have these dialogues on different topics. And every month, the moderator, which is often me, but not always, the moderator begins with this conversation about what does it mean to have a dialogue, and why are we doing this, and what is the distinction between dialogue and discussion, or dialogue and debate. And I think it's important as we launch into this idea of dialogue and living with this sort of posture toward others and life, that we identify a few key things up front. And so this is my opening spiel at these dialogues. And so I have to remind people every time. You can imagine at an interfaith dialogue that some people are not necessarily there to hear from others, but are there to share their own truth and to make sure others know the truth about faith and God and things. And so I have to remind people up front, we are here for dialogue, not discussion, not debate. Dialogue, first and foremost, requires collaboration. It requires that we show up with this deep listening ear, ready to hear, ready to offer our thoughts, but then to allow those thoughts and ideas to be expanded through the ideas and work of others. Discussion has a history to it, of course. Discussion comes from the same root word as percussion or concussion, which I think help us understand. It comes from an idea with that core of being shaken or being struck. Discussion is combative. Debate is combative. In these two scenarios, you bring your idea and your goal, your purpose is for your idea to win, your idea to take priority over all other ideas. Dialogue is an exchange. It is both a giving and a receiving from your partners or the participants in the story. And so I have to remind people up front, we are not here for debate. We are not here for you to tell us why your truth is the truth. We are here to create this collaborative experience to address the issues and problems and things that we see in the world so that we can collectively work together to grow and to increase our ability to build bridges in the world around us. That's my little spiel that I work up. And inevitably, I have to play moderator midway through when someone decides that they need to espouse their truth upon the rest of us. And we have to pause, and I have to say, that's a wonderful idea you're bringing, but it's not the purpose of what we're doing here. This series, what I hope to do with this is to help us to think about dialogue as a posture in the way that we live, in the way that we move and interact in our communities, in a way that we approach our family members that voted for Trump or whatever that may be, Scheer. A way that we approach our community members who are in opposition to everything that we think our community needs or is doing or should be doing. Dialogue has to be bigger than these moments that we create, which we should also be doing, these moments at Gather or at Fellowship of the Flight where our purpose is to gather and dialogue. But it should be an everyday experience and openness to that creative discovery. Dialogue is about collaboration. One of my favorite board games that we play with our kids, we're missing all the pieces now, so that's not true anymore, but before they lost all of the pieces, one of our favorite games to play with the kids was a German game called Orchard. And in the game Orchard, all the trees on the board game are filled with little tiny cute fruits, different types of fruits. And you roll the die, and if it lands on cherries, you pick a cherry. If it lands on a different fruit, you pick that. But there's a catch, of course. If it lands on the crow, you add a crow puzzle piece to the board. In the center of the board, there's a puzzle of a crow. Have you played this game? Great, perfect. Your goal, of course, is to pick all of the fruit before the crow's puzzle is filled out. Not you individually, you collectively. And if you beat the crow, you all win. If the crow is filled out, you all lose. It is a collaborative game. And I think about this, and you go, oh, these millennials and their collaborative games where there are no winners and losers. But dialogue is this way. It's more than 30 years old, by the way, so don't blame us. I don't call myself millennial, for what it's worth. It's not a slight to millennials, that's just me. It's a collaborative game, and it's beautiful because in dialogue, we create these experiences where we're able to win together, and in debate that creates a winner and a loser, at the end of the day, neither of us are gaining the creative and innovative work that solves problems. We are only creating a winner and a loser in our momentary debate. In the game of Orchard, you win together. You don't have a choice to work together. That's just how it works. But you win together as it works toward collaboration. And dialogue works the same way when done properly. It is about the discovery of newness, of new ideas, of greater solutions, of bringing ideas together and not competing and not winning or losing, but bringing them to expand and improve and hone and bolster each other's work and ideas. In that story of dialogue, we are all made better. As I began working more earnestly on this, I realized this might be a little bit awkward as it relates to biblical work. I'm sorry. We just did 12 weeks of Romans, so I feel like I can take a break from deep, intense study with text. But we are naturally competitive, and we take our Bible and we run with it to compete against the truth of others. In that storyline, in that discussion, in that debate, we create these I narratives. I have the answers. I can tell you the answers. And when you are listening to me, we all win. But that's not how life really works. And it creates hierarchy. It creates limited creativity, and it creates a lack of innovation in the way we do life together. Dialogue is about collaboration and about discovery. And that's where I want to stop today, is on this idea of discovery. You see, I think if we think about dialogue beyond a circle of people gathering to have a conversation, but if we think about doing life together and in our community and having a posture of dialogue, there is constantly place to create space for dialogue. That space happens when we are in a constant search and openness to discovery. One author, Barbara Brown Taylor, talks about the world or life as an altar. The experience of finding sacrament in everything that we do. And this is a strange place to start for a conversation on dialogue, but I think it's important because what she does is demands that we open our minds and our ability to be present in the world, opens our understanding of sacrament, not to the communion table or baptism or another sacrament. That's what. But she demands that we open our eyes to see sacrament in everyday life, to be prepared for discovery, both in our interactions with others, but also in the way that we perceive and view and walk through our community and our space and the world. So as we think about creating space for dialogue, it requires that we think about the world in a different way. It requires that we are open to discovery and always open to that collaboration. Whether that happens from individuals in our life or through a walk in nature or standing waiting for pickup at school for your kids. In all of those moments, life is happening that we are rushed through and losing opportunities to be open to discovery. She asks that we slow down so that we can experience, so that we can explore. Now, we can't all, because I think you hear slow down, and you think, I don't have time to slow down. Another author says, I know we can't all take our lunch breaks to do some people watching. Fair enough. He says, instead of walking at 60 paces per minute, maybe you walk at 45 paces per minute. Maybe you slow down just enough so that you're able to explore the world around you in a different way. Maybe you're able to slow down just enough so that you see the alleyway instead of only the sidewalk ahead. Maybe you slow down just enough so that you can see the glimmer of light off the cashier's face when you check out at the grocery store. Maybe you slow down just enough to perceive God working in ways that you wouldn't in your rush through life. This is, again, a strange place to start in talking about dialogue. But it's an openness to discovery that has to happen for us to do dialogue specifically. To be open for that discovery is to come into a conversation and listen instead of prepare your next argument. To be open to discovery is to come into a space to learn and not only to teach. As I say, from a stage that you don't get to respond to. Dialogue is about this conversation and exchange that happens amongst us. But for the most part, we tend to be fairly insular in our own ideas and in our own headspace, that we're not open, that we're not willing, that we're not in a place of discovery. Throughout the Bible, we see these moments of dialogue. And it's interesting that very few are intentional moments of dialogue. The moments of dialogue throughout the text are moments where someone is present in their situation, in their context, in the moment that's happening, and they're willing to let that be a teachable moment or a moment of exchange. So we think about Job, who's willing to be present in this messiness and to have this exchange and concern about the God he thought he knew. And Abraham, in the same space, hears of God's plans of destruction and asks the question, what if it doesn't have to be this way? And has this moment of collaboration with God in the way that the world works and moves. In those moments, and there's going to be a theme throughout our series here, there's going to be a theme of radical hospitality, which we've done specifically in the past. Specifically worked through a series on radical hospitality because it is vital. And it's vital in this conversation too because in hospitality we are generous toward the other. It allows us to be open. It allows us to be in a space of discovery. And it allows us to be in a place of learning rather than teaching. I think about it like this. Most of us drive. We don't make mistakes when we drive. I've never pulled out in front of somebody and caused issues or anything like that. Other people do that to me, and I get really angry because the lack of consideration for the people around them, for this person to cut me off in the middle of traffic, that they have no willingness to be observant of my needs. And the thing is, I think they do it on purpose to me. They pulled out in front of me. They knew how fast I was going and that I was in a hurry also, and that I also have somewhere to be, and they intentionally chose to do that to me. But when I turn the storyline and I'm the one that cuts somebody off, how do I view that situation? It was a mistake. I looked but didn't see. My kids were yelling in the back seat. I saw a puppy on the side of the road that I momentarily glanced at. Things happen. It's not personal. I give a wave, and they yell angrily back because, like me, they assumed that I did that to them intentionally. Radical hospitality, although that's a ridiculous example, is about being generous to those around us. And so I think about these interfaith dialogues, and for what it's worth, before that, I worked with an organization in New Orleans called the Erase that has conversations about race and dialogue about solutions in the divisiveness of race in our communities. And in these moments, to set aside your assumptions about the other, to have a generosity and a hospitality toward the other allows for you to let them share without you needing to insert your own opinions over and above. That generosity changes your outlook in the world and the way that we function, and it allows for a space of discovery and a space of collaboration that assuming intentions always prevents. And so in my slightly ridiculous story about cutting someone off, we see the dynamic. I have assumptions about my own attitude and my own mistakes, which are honest and innocent, and assumptions about the other's mistakes and their intentions to be malicious and hurtful specifically to me. The dichotomy between the two is what prevents us from having open place of discovery in our world. Even dialogue and openness to the other in that exchange of the vehicles, in the exchange of the car that turns in front of you that you want to show the middle finger to. In all of those small, minor instances, we have an opportunity to be open to discovery, open to collaboration, open to radical hospitality, or closed to ideas, closed to innovation, closed to creativity, closed to the other. Now, all of that is a strange place to start, but let's bring it back just briefly to the way that we converse with one another. in those dialogues, it is very easy to offend someone. In speaking specifically of the interfaith dialogues, it is easy to offend someone when you don't know maybe their culture or their background or what they've come to the experience with, or their other interactions with Christians or Muslims or Jews. Whatever that is, it is easy to be in a place that is offensive. And the dialogue has to set rules. When we do this, we often set rules. To have generosity toward others who are offensive without letting it pass. Sometimes we set up an oops, ouch rule. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it allows us to hear something that's offensive, to respond with an appropriate ouch, and for that person in kind to say, oops, and then we can converse about what creates that dynamic and how that offense takes place and how better to think about each other. But typically, when we lack the radical hospitality to recognize that another's intentions are not malicious, then we lack the ability to say ouch without it ending our conversation. To be in a place of discovery allows us to be in a place of generosity toward the other. And it allows us to enter these conversations faithfully, openly, and collaboratively. So as we work through this series, we're going to come back to these ideas. We'll do a little bit of scripture along the way. But to start us off, think about this as you go out of here this week. Or you can start now. Think about this as you go out of here. How do I walk through my world by creating space for dialogue? How do I walk through my world while creating space for generosity, for discovery? Yeah. How do we do that? How can you slow down just enough to experience the world differently? Our kids are doing this same series. And it's interesting because kids don't need a lot of this. They're walking through life full of discovery. But we tend to shut down discovery and creativity as we age because we know the answers. And we don't need the answers. In fact, we have the answers for others so we can share them. And in our conversations, kids have this space of discovery that is constant. And yet, even in that, we attempt to give them the answers instead of letting them discover. And I imagine that leads to them ultimately thinking they have the answers as adults. But being open to discovery, we can learn a lot from the group behind us, or behind me, in front of you. We're going to close with a song. Oh, Peter, thank you. I'll pray and we'll close out. God, we are so thankful to be here together, to be able to take the time to think about things that are beyond our own selfish desires, to take the time to allow for the ideas and interests of others to be incorporated into our own ideas, our own life, our own work. Help us to think about and see the world as sacrament so that we can be in a constant space of discovery, so that we can be in a space of learning and a space of generosity toward others. We love you. We pray in your Son's name. Amen. Thanks for listening to this sermon podcast from Open Door Church. Our intro and outro music was created by Lee Rosevere and is used under a Creative Commons by attribution license. Have a great week, ask the hard questions, and explore God's love. Everyone is always welcome to join the journey with us at Open Door. Learn more at opendoorfamily.ca. That's opendoorfamily.ca.